Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed U.S. Congress members yesterday, bringing up memories of Pearl Harbor and the 9/11 attacks in an appeal to the United States to provide more support to his country. And shortly after that address, President Joe Biden announced an additional $800 million in military assistance that will be sent to Ukraine. That includes anti-aircraft systems, grenade launchers, and ammunition. Representative Mike Quigley joined us yesterday for his reaction to the address. We also invited all of Illinois' Republican congressional delegation to join us, but none accepted our invitation. We began by asking Congressman Quigley to describe the reaction to Zelenskyy in that Capitol auditorium.
Very somber, very powerful message. I'll also say that when they showed the video with the horrific scenes of children being killed, a man holding the hand of his deceased daughter, and she's under a tarp, you could hear sobs and people crying. So, it's what we have seen horrifically on a daily basis in the news, but coupled with a powerful message, I think it really got through to the Congress.
And to that request of a no-fly zone that we heard again in this clip today, President Biden and NATO leaders have continually rebuffed these calls, fearing it could lead to a broader global conflict. Do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, there's precedent for doing this. We did it in Bosnia in 93 through 95, Libya in 2011, all to protect civilians. I think it can be done in a way to protect evacuation routes on a humanitarian basis. And I think that we have to stop differentiating the fact that they are not a member of NATO when it comes to an issue like this and trying to get people out of there if they want. The fact is, none of us care more or less about anybody because they're a member of NATO. So when we make decisions like this, I think we should take into consideration truly the horrors that we are facing there. And if we don't do it, you will see more hospitals pancake, more children dead under the rubble.
Well, and the worry from the president is that it would put U.S. troops or NATO troops in the position of perhaps having to shoot down Russian planes, which could lead to the U.S.'s involvement in this war. Is there another way to do this?
Well, sure. But first of all, everything we have asked our country and NATO to do was seen as escalatory when it was suggested. A month ago, if you had told me that we would lock Russia out of the SWIFT banking system and oil embargo, would have been unheard of. To think that we'd be sending such degrees of lethal aid, that was all viewed as escalatory. We need to recognize that Putin is escalating, and we are just rising to meet that challenge. We're now talking about the specter of chemical weapon. There was an attack, a shelling on a nuclear power plant. Chernobyl had 1 unit. This unit had 6, and the Russians refused to let the Ukrainians put out the fire. If this had gone to its catastrophic worst, you'd be talking about most of Europe being involved in that catastrophe. So this isn't just about Ukraine, and it can't be just focused on, well, we don't want it to escalate. Putin is escalating. We need to meet the demand. Well, Zelenskyy said if it's not a no-fly zone, at least give us the planes or give us anti-aircraft or missiles that'll shoot them down. And whatever it takes to help them, we're not talking about U.S. troops on the ground.
And the president has still avoided sending those MiG planes from Poland. What do you think the hesitation is?
I don't know, because Secretary Blinken was on, I think, Meet the Press about a week ago saying that they're looking at this very, very closely. And they seem to be close to a deal where they would backfill the Polish government for sending MiGs there, because the Ukrainians, that's the only planes they know how to fly. What happened to that arrangement? I just don't know. So, okay, if you don't want to do the no-fly zone, give them these planes. And if we're not going to do that, give them something else. But we simply can't watch, because while the Ukrainians are fighting so heroically, I will tell you, the Russians aren't leaving unless there's some diplomatic success, and the horrors will continue.
And here is President Biden today talking about that $800 billion additional package that the U.S. will send to Ukraine.
The United States and our allies and partners are fully committed to surging weapons of assistance to the Ukrainians. And more will be coming as we source additional stocks of equipment that we're ready to transfer. Now I want to be honest with you. This could be a long and difficult battle, but the American people will be steadfast in our support of the people of Ukraine in the face of Putin's immoral, unethical attacks on civilian populations.
So not sending the planes, but what is Ukraine getting from this package?
Well, among the things they're getting is more ammunition. They're getting drones. They're getting some help to deal with air. They're getting helicopters and other lethal aid. My argument is we are upping the lethal aid step by step, but the Ukrainians are in a race for time. President Zelenskyy spelled that out, and when he's talking about this, they can't have this ping-ponging back and forth in the debate. They need us to have pretty dramatic action quickly, because every day makes the biggest difference. The Russians are not far, unfortunately, from Kyiv, and they've already devastated so many other cities. So, if we're going to set the limits, let's get out there much quicker, because you're seeing the devastation that's taking place without more help.
And there have been some talks of a possible diplomatic solution to this that could involve Ukraine agreeing not to join NATO for a period of time. First of all, is there any realistic diplomatic solution? And second of all, is that even acceptable, those conditions, given the fact that Russia's the aggressor here and Russia's done so much damage?
No, you make the right point. And you certainly don't want Ukraine to have to make a decision. That's, again, why this enhanced aid matters so much. You don't want President Zelenskyy to have to make a choice because he doesn't want to lose so many more Ukrainians. So giving them this strength gives them a better strength at the bargaining table. And you certainly don't want to give Putin what he wanted in the first place, which is Crimea and the territories in the east and the demilitarization of Ukraine. Clearly what Putin wants to do is weaken his future prey, because his long-term goals won't change because he doesn't win everything here.
Congressman, I know you've been focused on Ukraine, but your name has floated as a possible candidate for mayor of Chicago. Are you considering jumping into that race?
I've sort of put an embargo on talking about almost anything else but Ukraine, just out of respect, and toward that end, so you don't think I'm just avoiding the issue. I was at the Ukrainian rally on Sunday with Senator Durbin. I didn't choose to march in any of the parades. So as a co-chair of the Ukrainian caucus, I've got to focus on that. All those other issues will be discussed later on. But right now, this is the greatest foreign policy crisis we've faced since since 9/11, and the greatest war we've faced in Europe since 1945.
So it doesn't sound like you're shutting the door on the mayoral thing. Is there a timeline where you might decide?
There's a big difference between making a decision on that or talking about making a decision on that and not talking about it at all, because I want to focus on Ukraine. I want to focus on Ukraine.
All right, Congressman, we thank you for joining us today. Our thanks to Congressman Mike Quigley.